So today we'll do something slightly different, seeing that this is also the time that many people will be giving their zakat. So we figured that we'll just do a little something on the fiqh of zakat. So we're going to break it down. We're not going to go into a huge amount of detail per day and make it into a 2 hour session, which it could easily become, but we'll break it down systematically. So, inshallah, without further ado, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasulihil Kareem, Amma Ba'd. So, fiqh of zakat. Today we're going to be looking on whom is zakat obligatory. So, cover a couple of topics. First, today we'll look at what is the definition of zakat. What is zakat in the first place? Then, looking at who is it obligatory, there's certain things we have to look at. We look at the qualities of the person, on what type of people is zakat obligatory, and then in terms of their wealth, that is another consideration that we're going to look at. So, breaking down what is zakat. There's four aspects to it, so we'll break them down systematically. So zakat is transfer of ownership. A person is transferring ownership of specific wealth. Now the specific wealth we're going to look at in more detail. Then it has to go to an eligible person. So who is an eligible person? This, again, there is more detail. And following certain conditions, and amongst the conditions, we are going to look at those today. So again, simply is transfer of ownership of specific wealth to an eligible person following certain conditions. This is the definition of zakat. So based on each one of these topics, we will be able to determine whether something is zakat, whether the zakat given in such a condition is valid, or whether it is not valid, based on this definition, which is established through the sacred texts. So today we are going to be looking at the qualities of the people giving zakat. The qualities, the prerequisites of giving zakat in terms of the people and the wealth. So first, let's look at the qualities of the person. So there are always some qualities that are required for any deed to, first of all, become obligatory, and then to be, acceptable. So first and foremost, a person giving must be Muslim, because only Muslims are addressed by the discourse of any obligation, regardless whether it's salat, zakat, hajj, etc. Whatever obligation comes in the texts is being addressed to the Muslims. So if a non-Muslim does not pray, they will not be accountable for it, because they were not addressed by this obligation. And likewise, if a person accepts Islam, if they accept Islam later on in their life, then for the years that have passed, they do not have to go back and pray those years of salat. They do not have to go back and recalculate from their wealth, how much money did I have? Did I have to give zakat at that time? They don't have to worry about it, because only the Muslims are addressed by these obligations. So the first quality for the obligation for the acceptance of any action is that a person must be Muslim. The second is that they must be baligh. They must be Islamically mature. Gee, what does insure mean? What does mature mean? Mature means someone who is old, like Bhai, like Saad Bhai. He is old. Gee, he is. which I will explain. So only once a person becomes mature Islamically, they are legally obliged to perform the deeds stipulated by Sharia. If a minor does not perform them, they will not be questioned. So whatever the deed may be, whether it be zakat, whether it be hajj, whatever it might be, they are only obliged to do it once they become mature. Now, Islamically, what do we mean when they become mature? Well, Islamically it goes according to the physical uh, markers that effectively a person reaches, uh, they cross into puberty, and the boy has his marker, he has his nocturnal emissions. The girl, she has her marker, meaning that she starts having her monthly cycle. So that would be when someone reaches maturity when we're talking about Islam. So at that point in Islam, they are considered adults. Has their mental development completed? No. But then again, has the mental development of someone who's 18 years old completed? No. But they keep going anyways. So Islamically, someone is considered mature once they have these physical markers which manifest themselves. With respect to guys, it will generally be nocturnal emissions. For girls, it will be her monthly cycle. So that is the second prerequisite, second quality of the person for any deed, whatever it might be. And like I mentioned, if a minor does not perform a deed, he does not pray his zakat, uh, does not pray his salat, they will not be questioned about it. The issue of a person getting into a good habit, specifically with respect to his daily prayers, his salat. A child is encouraged to pray salat, to do his daily prayers when he's 7 years old, and he is reprimanded when he is 10 years old if he does not pray, because when the time comes, there is no scope for uh, any lapse in his prayers. By the time he becomes mature, he must be praying all of his prayers. So he ramps up before that time, so that when the time comes, that he is fully prepared for it. Then the last quality is he must be aqil, he must be sane. If a person, Allah has not blessed someone, He has not given them that sanity, that soundness of mind through which he can distinguish between good and bad. Allah has not given him that mental capacity. Then likewise, Allah will not question him about his shortfalls in complying with the commandments. Allah will not question him about it, because Allah did not give him the capacity to understand them, to grasp them, and to fulfill them. And that is the meaning of the ayat, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah will not put a burden on a person, on any soul, more than it can bear. So these are the three standard qualities for any action to be accepted in Islam. So we loosely term them as the MBA, Muslim Baligh Aqil. So these are the three basic things. Now with respect to zakat, there's also a fourth one, but I did not put too much emphasis on it because it's kind of something which is not really common these days, that a person must be free. At the time where slavery is existent, not that Islam is encouraging it in any way, but if it is the system that is running, then the slave uh, will not be obliged to give zakat because he is not the owner of much. So the free person will be obliged. The person who does not have will not be obliged. But seeing that that's not one of the main concerns that we're facing today, I'm just mentioning it like that, but what you see on the screen is the main topics of concern to us today. Then we look at the qualities of the wealth. And now this is where we get into some more detail as to who or what kind of wealth would we have to give zakat on. So first of all, the person must be possessor of nisab for a year. He must be possessor of nisab. So, of course, you're seeing it's highlighted because it's a, I wouldn't say it's a loaded word, but yeah, it requires definition. So nisab is that basic minimum amount which has been established in Sharia. And two nisabs have been given. One has been given of silver, which has been the common basic minimum amount which has been used throughout the world. And there's also been the nisab of gold. For someone who only possesses gold, there's a given amount. So in terms of the nisab of silver, it's about 612-ish grams of silver, or the value thereof. And in terms of the nisab of gold, it's about 85-ish grams of gold. So the nisab of silver these days comes up to about 550-ish dollars. We'd have to look at the most recent price of silver to come to the value of nisab. And for gold, it would be about 85-ish grams. So again, we're going to have to look at the market value of gold to determine what that value is. So this possessor of the person, the wealth must be reaching the level of nisab for an entire year. And then it should be of growing wealth. That's the second quality. That not just any wealth is considered what Islam has recognized as growing wealth. So growing wealth is of two types. Growing wealth is either that wealth which is actually growing and increasing, or that wealth which is in the ruling of something which is growing and increasing. So for those types of wealth which are actually growing and increasing, livestock. You have 10 cows, or 10 cows and the males, and then next year you have 12, and then the year after that you have 15, and the year after that you have 21, and they keep going up because they're reproducing. So that is actual growing wealth. A person has some business merchandise. He bought some goods, he wants to sell them. So now he started off paying $10 per piece, but with the $10 he is making another $10 worth of profit. So now this $10 is becoming $20. This is growing wealth. So whether it be livestock, whether it be merchandise. Now with respect to money, money is in the category of that thing which is in the ruling of something which is growing. Money is in the ruling of something which is growing because a person can and he should try to use his money to increase his money. So it is in the ruling of something which is growing. Now this is as opposed to things which are his basic needs. So we'll cover that topic a bit later, just 2 points down. So it must be of growing wealth, whether it be money, whether it be gold, silver, whether it be business merchandise, whether it be livestock, whether it be crops. These are all types of growing wealth. It must be in his complete ownership. So complete ownership means that it's in his hand and he has full authority to do whatever he wants with it. These two topics come under the basic heading of complete ownership. Having it in his hand and being able to use it for whatever he wants. So if these two qualities are not there, a person, he gave money to someone. Say that I gave a loan to somebody. So now this $10,000 which I gave as a loan belongs to me. But is it in my hand? No, it is not in my hand. So I will have to calculate zakat on this amount, but will I have to discharge this amount? Will I have to pay the zakat of the $10,000 on this account? No, I will not have to, because it is not in my complete ownership. So on the flip side, someone has, he has an amanat, a trust in his hand. He's holding on to some money which someone told him, look, you have this money, hand it off to person X when you get a chance. So now I'm holding on to $200,000 that belongs to person X. It's in my hand, but it does not belong to me. Do I pay zakat on it? No, because it's not in my complete ownership. It's in my hand, but I do not have the right to do with it what I want. So both aspects we talk about when it comes to complete ownership, that it is in my hand and that I can do with it what I want. Then it's actually considered someone's money. Now, the next topic at hand is it should be in excess of his basic needs, his basic necessities. So Sharia will not penalize a person for his basic needs. If a person has a nice car, say that a person is driving around, a nice Lexus or a Benz, and it's what he needs to get around from here to his office, pick up his kids. That's his day-to-day car. That's his only car. So even though the car is worth a bit, but we will not take it into the calculation to determine whether he has to give zakat or not, because that's his basic need. His clothes will not be taken into consideration. His foods will not be taken into consideration. Sharia has considered 5 things from a person's basic needs. Sharia has considered 5 things from a person's basic needs. So those things are his transport, his food, his clothing, his housing, and whatever his wife or his marriage. These are the things which are considered as basic needs of a person. So not all of them come in, like his wife is not something considered as something that we could put a dollar value on, or a wife's husband is not something that we put a dollar value on, but the things that we can put a dollar value on, we would. But these, even though we can put a dollar value on them, they will not be taken into the calculation of whether this person pays zakat based on that or not. So he might have a nice house, but he will not be taken into consideration whether he pays zakat because of that or not. That's his house that he lives in. If it's otherwise, a house that he's putting on the market, houses he's trying to flip, that's another story. But the house that he lives in, which is his basic need, this, we will not take into consideration. So the money which we are looking at with respect to zakat is the money which is over and above his basic needs. Or not the money, the wealth which is over and above his basic needs. Money would always be taken into consideration. Now, it should be exclusive of debt. So when we are doing a calculation of zakat, we will look at his assets in terms of his zakatable assets. How much gold does he possess? How much silver does he possess? How much money does he possess? So all of these will be taken into consideration. How much, side things in terms of things which are in the ruling of money. For example, investments. What kind of investments does he have? And so on and so forth. And that will be taken into consideration in terms of money. Then how much, does he have any business stock? Does he have any merchandise that he has to sell? How much merchandise does he have on hand? And that would be added to his assets. Now, in terms of his liabilities, we would see what he has to pay in terms of his monthly expenses, which are already due on him. Sharia has loosely stated that nisab minus his basic necessities. So today, in these days, I discussed with one of my teachers that, these days mostly things go on a month-to-month basis. A person has a monthly electricity bill, a monthly rent bill, a monthly car payment, a monthly this, a monthly that. That in my consideration, monthly is a straightforward way to calculate how much a person's basic necessities are going to be at. I said, yeah, that's fine. So I look at it on a monthly basis. That on a monthly basis, has he paid off? Is his payment for his house still due, or has he paid it off? If it's already paid off, then he will not exclude that. He will not take that out from his assets. But if it's not been paid off, then we will add that to his liabilities. And the last bit is the debt. If he has debt, then that will be, again, subtracted from his assets. So a person has debt of, say, $50,000. He has assets of $10,000. He has business merchandise of $10,000, but he has a debt of $50,000. Then this person will be minus 30,000. For zakat calculations in terms of whether he has to give zakat, we will say that this person is minus 30,000 with respect to having to give zakat. So he would not be having to give any zakat. Let's say that a person, another calculation, he has 10,000 in cash, 10,000 in business assets, in business merchandise. Sorry. He has 10,000 in business merchandise. But, and so yeah, I distinguish between that because business assets would also include his would also include the machinery that he uses, and that we're not talking about. That is not zakatable. But the merchandise which he is selling, that is zakatable. So that should be added. So he has 10,000 in cash, 10,000 in business merchandise, and he has a debt of $5,000. That puts him up in the 15 plus 15. So he would have to still give zakat at that point on 15,000, not on 20,000. So now let's look at some scenarios of ownership of nisab. A person who initially reaches nisab is the first time in his life that he hits that dollar value of whatever nisab is. So let's, for discussion's sake, look at the silver nisab, which is about 550-ish bucks minus all the other liabilities. So the person in his life, for the first time, when he is 16, he has no liabilities. Parents are taking care of everything. And in his bank account, he has 550 bucks. Or he gets that paycheck one day, and now he's at $1,000. So he initially reaches nisab. He should start calculating. He should take down this date and note and calculate it with respect to the lunar year. Now say that it happens to be the first of Ramadan, for discussion's sake. So if in the next year, the first of Ramadan, he is still above nisab, let's say that his money never went down to zero because he doesn't have any expenses. So his money remains up for an entire year. He holds on to nisab. Then he will give zakat. That is straightforward. He held on to that nisab for the entire year, or might have dipped slightly, but he maintained it. So we look on point to point. We're not looking at the entire year, that did he maintain it for the entire year above 560 bucks, 550 bucks, whatever the figure might be. Rather, we look at point to point, that at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. So if at the end of the year he had it, and at the beginning of the year he had it, first of Ramadan to first of Ramadan, yes, he's good. He pays zakat on the first of Ramadan. That is his zakat date. Then afterwards, a person who, second scenario, year on year he has it. So after the first year, now we'll just look at the second year. We'll look at the first of Ramadan on the second year, third year. Does he always have it? If he always has his zakat, he always has his basic nisab, assets minus liabilities, minus debts, then he's okay. He will keep on giving zakat. And sorry, one other thing I forgot to mention, when we talk about debts, we talk about short-term debts. So this has been quantified as whatever is, or qualified as what happens within, what is due within a year, and what is being called for within a year. So a person financed a car over 7 years or over 4 years, for example. A $48,000 car financed over 4 years, he owes $1,000 every month on the car. So how much will he take off? How much will he deduct because of this loan that he has to pay back? He will deduct 12,000 from his net assets because his short-term debt is 12,000. Although the total debt is 48,000, but what is due in 1 year? At $1,000 a month for 12 months, it is 12,000. So he would subtract 12,000 from his net assets, or from his assets. So that was a short discussion going back to, what do we call it? Exclusive of debt. That should have been a discussion that we covered in debt. Okay, so now you're on your possession. We look at the endpoints of the year. Don't complicate yourself by looking at any fluctuation. You don't have to go to the fundamental theorem of calculus and do any sort of crazy averages. Just look year to year, endpoint to endpoint. Is it above? If it's above, great, he gives zakat. If not, if he dipped below, as in the third scenario, that a person, he started off the year, first of Ramadan, he had nisab. Now, second, at the end point of the year, he did not have nisab. So then we will, he will not have to give zakat at that point. He will not have to give zakat on the first of Ramadan anymore. But we will see that at what point did he stay, was the last point that he had nisab. Say that Ramadan, Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram. So Muharram is a couple of months down the line. So Ramadan is the 9th month of the year. Shawwal is the 10th month of the year. Dhul Qa'dah is the 11th. Dhul Hijjah is the 12th month. Muharram is the first month of the year of Islamic calendar. So now we see that in Muharram, in the previous Muharram, he came back to having nisab, or that was the last time he had nisab. So we're going to keep calculating from that point, from Muharram to Muharram. If he had, then he will give zakat at that point. But if he just dipped below, number 3, if he just dipped below and then he came back up before the end of the year. So in Muharram, he say that in Ramadan in Ramadan he had his nisab. 5 months down the line, he dips below nisab, but then 2 months after he comes back up. Then we will consider as if he remained above nisab throughout the entire period. So in the first month of his zakat calculation, he was above nisab. Second year, he was above. Third year, he was above. Fourth month, he went below. Fifth month, he was below. He didn't hit 0 in either of them. He remained below. Then 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, he was above. Up to the 12th, he was above. When he came to the anniversary, then he will give zakat as if he never dipped below. But when a person goes in the red, he actually hits 0. Then at that point we start doing an entire new calculation. Gee. What do I mean by red? I means that he has less than 0. So at that point we're going to re-evaluate his zakat year. But if he just dipped below, as in situation 3, and he came back up before the end of the year, then nothing changes. But in the situation where he dipped below, that's where we're going to re-establish his zakat year. So in Muharram, he actually dipped below 0. Or say that in the month after that, the 6th month of his zakat calculation, he dipped below 0. Then we would look at the last point that he actually had, so which was Muharram that we had talked about. In the fifth month, he was still above nisab. Sixth month, he hit zero. So we say, okay, well, yeah, we're going to look at things from the back. And in the last situation, if someone actually, he entirely goes into long-term debt, he himself is completely in debt, he's at below zero and it's for a longer period of time, then he becomes actually under the heading of one of the people who can receive zakat, gharimin. So this, then he falls under the bill of amongst the people who are entitled to receive zakat, which we had alluded to earlier. So inshallah, we will we'll keep that going. So for to an eligible person, he falls under the heading of an eligible person. So inshallah, that we will leave it at that much for today, unless there are any particular questions on this. Then we can uh, elaborate. And I see my time is running out also, but inshallah, if there's any questions, let me know. Otherwise, it is what it is. Inshallah, we start up again tomorrow. We will talk about the types of wealth which are included or which need to be considered in zakat, which we sort of touched upon today, but inshallah we'll touch upon more detail tomorrow. All right, brothers. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.